You're listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison for the usual busy and varied show. The ECB have announced the latest round of central contracts. We'll talk about some of the key takeaways from that, with long-time discard Sam Curran awarded a 2-year deal. The former England captain Michael Vaughan joins us to look ahead to the start of the Ashes and why he thinks baseball can win over the Australian public. Esteemed Indian writer Sharda Ugra from the Hindustan Times reflects on a historic Women's World Cup victory for India, and we'll discuss just what their maiden title will do or could do for women's cricket in the country. We'll also discuss England's struggles in ODI cricket, which are ongoing, and ask if missing out on the on the 2027 World Cup is a genuine possibility. Missing out on automatic qualification, that is. And of course, we'll bring you the final word. So plenty to come over the next hour. This is Following On. Well, Harmy, I tell you, I'm quite tempted just to say the contracts have been announced, and then leave you to it for 8 or 9 minutes. What does it all mean? There are a couple of eye-catching contracts, but are they? I mean, can we read too much into the fact that, well, Curran's got a 2-year contract, Jacob Bethel has a 2-year deal, while Ollie Pope and Zak Crawley only have 1-year deals. Shoaib Bashir has a 1-year deal. And there are contracts for the first time for Sonny Baker. Is that a little premature? Liam Dawson, Jamie Overton, Luke Wood and Saqib Mahmood all have contracts for the first time. These are what caught my eye. I don't necessarily know what they mean.
To be honest, I look at the list and it's a nightmare for Keezy. It really is. I feel for me, mate, because you've got to name the contracts, because the employment rule is, I think it's 1st of October when, 1st of October or the 1st of November when the contract runs out. I'm sure in his sort of heart of hearts, he would like that to have been the 1st of January or possibly the 1st of February. But obviously you can't have everything because it's well balanced. It's a lot of contracts. There are some people who around county cricket, and there might be some chief executives, very happy that some of their players have been contracted. So it takes them off their payroll, because at the end of the day, contracted or not contracted, it just seems like we're seeing with Sam Cook at the start of the summer, that if England want you, and if England want to sort of try and protect you, like Essex found out before the first Zimbabwe test, England will pull you out. And the compensation doesn't get you a bowler like Sam Cook. So I think the contracts are, a sticky subject. They're a hell of a lot. There's a lot of money being shelled out here by the ECB. I look at some of the 2-year contracts. I see Sam Curran one. I'll start with, there's some younger players have been rewarded, and I think there's a longevity in what England are trying to do, even though we'll come on to it in a second, the shambles of New Zealand and 50-over cricket. England are trying, and I agree with Brendan, this is the best England group they've got. So when you look at that, they're trying to build some continuity and go with, I think, a younger group in white ball cricket with, a sprinkling of experience. And they're trying to sort of say, right, we're going to back you guys, the likes of Mahmood, who doesn't play a great deal. Salt, I'm surprised that a 1-year contract for Salt. Because I think
Rian Ahmed also.
Rian Ahmed. Rian Ahmed's in there, but he needs to play now. So if he's been given a 1-year contract, the plays for England, or you just leave him with Leicester and you don't mess him around. I think he has to start playing. The bowlers have been protected, and then I'll come on to the bit that sort of where I see it is probably what Keezy would have been. Can we get this in the 1st of February sort of thing, is you've got a 1-year contract for Zak Crawley, a 1-year contract for Ollie Pope, which will be the most eye-catching from the wider world of what does that mean when everybody else in the test team's getting a 2-year contract, and a 1-year contract for Mark Wood. And what I mean by what Rob possibly wanting it after the Ashes is that you look at Mark Wood and you're thinking, one more injury, if he's not in Australia by Christmas, and we always look at the glass half empty, but you have to have these in the back of your mind. If Ollie Pope and Zak Crawley, if Ollie Pope's not in the team come the second Test match, where's his Test match career? And if Zak Crawley's averaging 15 by the end of the Ashes, where's his Test match career? And then you couple with the fact that Mark Wood hasn't played since February, and he's been on a 3-year contract. You look at these contracts and you think, whoever's been planning them and whoever's had it in position, surely you must have gotten to the point where you've gone, right, McCullum's on a contract until at the end of next year. Stokes is on a, you want Stokes to be on till the end of next year. You're looking at Chris Woakes being told he's not going to be picked up basically ever again, and we want you to retire because you're not going to be part of this Ashes and you're out of the next Ashes cycle. So all these things, you look at it, and I think the three players that have got 1-year contracts who are probably on thin ice are the ones that hopefully can turn it into England winning the Ashes. So I'm looking at a half empty. The half full one would be Ollie Pope, grasps the fact that he's got a 1-year contract, he's got a bit to prove, and bang, he goes out and does well in the Ashes. Zak Crawley's been primed and ready for this one Ashes series, and he's been backed by the hierarchy to go and perform in the Ashes, and he's only got a 1-year contract, so he's going to then kick on, and hopefully Mark Wood can play 3 out of the 5 Test matches, and he will play next summer. And you're going, we're not testing these players, but we are making smart decisions. But I think the smartest decision from ECB's point of view and from a financial point of view, from Rob Key's point of view, probably would have been giving contracts out 1st of January or 1st of February, when you possibly could have freed up a little bit more room for players who you think is going to be involved in the next Ashes 4-year cycle, which is 2 years at home, 2 years away. But the rest of them, I don't think you could have picked too many more. I don't think there's anybody out of contract you think should have one. And we have a soft spot for Sam Curran on this one. I think Sam Curran has been tested. I think he's been put to one side. He's been basically told, do you want to play for England? And if you do, it's on our terms. And I think he's now showing how much he really wants to play for England. So he's being rewarded. Very good.
Which leads me on to my next question. You said that they're protecting players, but I mean, it's got to be for mutual benefit here. I mean, the ECB got to be looking after themselves as well here. So what it means is that if they believe or they're told by their medical team that somebody needs rest and recuperation, needs to have a period where they're not playing, they can withdraw. So if Sam Curran, for example, is playing in the IPL, I don't know whether he will get another massively lucrative deal, but if he is, and the ECB say, well, actually, we've just organised a series against Ireland and we want you to come back, that could cost not just Sam Curran, any player, a lot of money. I mean, 2 years ago, we said 27 contracts. Gee, and we thought that they were compromised. They had guys like Moeen Ali, who was turning 37 in that list. And I think we both said, well, they'll never do 27 again. Well, we're up to 30. And I can't, what is the you say protect players. I'm thinking the ECB should be protecting themselves in the interests of English cricket. And can you sort of succinctly sum up who actually benefits and what is the prime purpose of central contracts?
Well, who benefits is the player. The player benefits because in this modern world, in this relaxed system, even the franchise tournaments, if the player wanted to go, he'll go. And as much as Rob Key and Golden Thompson say, no, these are our contract, they're our players, there's no way they're getting pulled out of the IPL. And nor should they, because that's the biggest lucrative tournament that's going. But there have been times when players haven't been rested because there's a tournament on, but then got rested throughout the summer. There'll be a lot of people who watch their counties and go, well, hold on, them players aren't playing like we're going to come to now. We're going to come to how Australia are preparing for this Ashes series compared to how England are preparing for this Ashes series. England go into a test summer with very, very few players play more than one game in first-class cricket, because we're going to prioritise and we're going to look after them, and we're going to make sure that throughout the summer that they're going to be fit and raring to go. and then everybody comes in undercooked, underdone, and then all of a sudden in October, November, December, when there's no cricket on and there's franchise tournaments around the world, the players go off and play. So you can see, from both sides that they're not. It doesn't always work. For me, I think 30 is a lot. And I'm just coming back to the fact that we were saying before, if it had been done straight after the Ashes, if they had some will and foresight to go, right, once the Ashes is finished, we will then contract for the next Ashes cycle. Like telling Chris Wokes, you are no longer getting selected for England cricket team because we don't think you'll be fit for this one. And we think we're not going to need you going into the next 4 years. There's probably that conversation to be had after this Ashes with 3, possibly 4 players in this group that are contracted, like Johnny Bairstow having a year's contract and not playing, and many more, Moeen Ali and others. So you can understand that I would imagine Gould and Thompson will be looking at that list, who have to bring in the cash and balance the books and go, that's a lot of money leaving the ECB for us to be not won any of the big series as against the top 3, being 8th in the world 50 over ranking. And fair enough, we've got a decent 2020 team that have a great chance of winning the world T20, but 30 contracts for the state of where we are from a national team. There's a lot of pressure on what's going to happen over the course of these next 5 test matches, because if England lose, that 30 contracts and that money that's being shelled out for a team who haven't done a great deal when it comes to the winning against the big in the big series. Not won a test series over 5 test matches, I think, since 2018, 2017. I mean, there's a lot of money being shelled out in English cricket, and where's the sort of comebacks off it? 2019 World Cup, in 2020 World Cup. We've not won the big games, big series, and unfortunately, it will come home to roost if we lose the Ashes. I think we've got a great chance, but I'm probably looking at half empty and not half full.
Right. The 2 things I don't understand. Why would such a young player, well, he's not young, but very inexperienced, like Sonny Baker, what's the point of having him on a contract? You just let Hampshire rule him. Look after him. And also, a guy like Liam Dawson, why would he be given a year's contract? He's in England's T20 plans. They made that decision 6 months ago. Right, he's going to be our T20 spinner. The T20 World Cup's in 4 or 5 months' time. Could he not be given a 6-month contract? Could players not be given 18-month contracts to make it suit them? Why are they limited by 12 months? And I'm not testing your or my legal knowledge here, because neither of us is qualified, but that would make sense. I mean, it's not convenient. The time of year when 12-month contracts or 24-month contracts are handed out is not convenient. So could they not be on 6 or 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, when you look at, I've just highlighted an Ashes, whether it's an Ashes win or an Ashes defeat, the 3 players I highlighted that for making an example of is one might not play. One hasn't played since February, March. And I mean, Zak Crawley's probably his career with with the public, Stokes and McCullum is being thrown heavily towards this 5 test matches. Now, where does Liam? You're right. Liam likes a Liam Dawson. Some of the young lads. Sonny Baker could have been on a development contract, which is, we're going to keep an eye on you. We are gonna top up your contract, give you a little bit more money, and make sure we look after the amount of overs you bowl. Mitch Stanley's played 2 first-class matches. He's 24. Eddie Jack. I think Eddie Jack made his first-class debut in a Lions game. I mean, where's the education in cricket? Where is it? I know the hierarchy don't regard first-class cricket in this country with any regard, to be fair. And I mean, I think the top echelons of the ECB would rather that English first-class cricket wasn't played. But where is their education in it? Where is going around the country for 6 first-class matches or 5 first-class matches at the first 8? because at the end of the day, you give him a central contract. You know, if Sonny Baker, if England have a massive injury crisis from a fast bowler's point of view, and they could do, right? They could do. When you look at England's track record of injury, players that they've got in, Wood haven't played since March. You know, you look at Tong's career. I mean, it was hanging on by a thread. Yeah, Atkinson's had a little bit. Archer's been out for 5 or 6 years. Stokes, you don't know, if he can get through 5 test matches. You can potentially throw a Sonny Baker into a test match in the MCG and ask him to bowl 40 overs on a flat one. You know, where's his comeback to that? Where's his feel safe mode, going back to the well and going, right, I've bowled 40 overs in a first class match. You know, all these decisions that they've made to protect the players is fine, but the player hasn't come into their education part of their careers yet, and we're now rewarding them with central contracts. That is something I struggle with a little bit, especially from a bowler's point of view. Josh Hull, Eddie Jack, Mitch Stanley, great. Development contracts, perfect. Hardly played any cricket. Make sure they bowl next year. Make sure they play cricket next year. Because if they don't, then asking them to play 5 days test match cricket against the best players from another country on a flat pitch in test match cricket, I mean, that's unfair. That's unfair on the individuals. So I'm always looking at the doom and gloom. Right? People will say I'm always looking at the doom and gloom. But these are the things you've got to think about when you're making big decisions on careers and on series, which mean, I think, everything to your legacy as a coach, a captain, a director of cricket. Because at the end of the day, you're not playing Hampshire second team, Durham second team, dog and duck cricket. You're playing international Ashes cricket. You're playing England against India. You're playing against England against Australia. This is where you know, you look back in years gone by, double Ashes winner. I mean, Stephen Finn. I mean, I've been reading a lot with Stephen Finn. His book's coming out this week, and it's brilliant. And, you know, he won the Ashes 3 times. You know, these are what your careers are remembered for. Darren Gough he played in an era where they didn't. Nasser Hussain, Michael Atherton, Alex Stewart, great players, didn't win the Ashes. This is about your legacy as a cricketer. And if you've only played 2 first-class matches and you get thrown into a test match, I'm sorry, you're just not going to perform. You're not going to do yourself any justice at all. So that's sometimes where I get the half-empty glass.
Now then, let's hear from Harmy's former captain, Michael Vaughan, who so famously led the 2005 Ashes campaign. He's been speaking to our producer and reporter, Scott Taylor, to get his thoughts on what might happen in Australia this winter.
So Michael, thanks for joining us. Just how excited are you for this Ashes series? It seems to be one of the most anticipated series we've had in a while.
Yeah, and you can understand why. I mean, this England side are very watchable. They bring a huge amount of entertainment. I think you look back to 2023, the 2-all series, there was great drama, great test matches, a little bit of confrontation at the end of the series where I'm led to believe the teams didn't even have a beer at the closer at the Oval, which is unheard of in an Ashes series. I guess the news of Pat Cummins not playing in the first test in Perth, England being bowled out a couple of times cheaply in New Zealand, the talk of the preparation. But on November the 21st, it all comes down to the team that reacts and plays the most basic, disciplined, hard cricket that you possibly can. If you can do that over a period of time in Australia, you can win test matches. Australia generally play that style of cricket. England play a brand of cricket that's very flamboyant, risky at times, great to watch, but you know, with the ball moving around a little bit, it's still that vulnerable area that this England batting lineup has, that if the ball moves around laterally, they're a batting lineup that, as we've seen in New Zealand, can be bowled out, and that's what Australia will try and work towards.
Is that a cause for concern, judging from the first two ODIs? I know it's a different format, different ball, different conditions, but
yeah, I mean, I've said many times, this England side are the most enjoyable team that I've kind of have watched, have been a pundit on. They bring a great amount of joy to Test match cricket. Now I want them to win. You know, it's a series that's it's there for the taking. If they can understand that it's not about playing one way. you can't just play the aggressive way in Australia all the time. You have to go up and down in the gears. Yes, you have that mindset of wanting to be aggressive, but if you're facing Hazelwood, Stark, Pat Cummins, if he comes into the series in potentially the second or third game, Boland, Cameron Green, Bo Webster, Nathan Lyon, the bigger boundaries in Australia, you've got to be very wary that playing the aggressive game all the time. I haven't seen a team play that way and win in Australia. I've seen many teams earn the right to play that way, and from around the 30th over mark to the 80th over mark, when the ball's a bit softer, this Kookaburra ball is a different ball to an old Kookaburra ball that we used to play against. It seems to do a little bit more. And it might be that England have to play a bit attritionally for the first 20 overs to earn the right to be there when the ball's softer. The pitch is playing a lot pure, with a more pure sense. And if they can do that and earn the right, they'll score quick enough anyway. My concern is, the ball moving around, they go too hard too soon, and you lose 5 or 6 wickets very quickly, which has happened before with the England team, and it's happened just recently in New Zealand in the white ball game. White ball cricket's different. Of course, you have to go at it. You have to try and get those 300s, 325s. They're the kind of normal scores these days. But I've seen other teams do it in a different style and a different fashion, and that's the one concern I have about the England side, is that they might go a little bit too hard too soon.
There's a lot of talk about players touring Australia. Tuffers was on talkSPORT yesterday and said he got sledged by the customs man as soon as he arrives. But do you think this team and how they're perceived in Australia, it doesn't help when Harry Brooks says go harder, Ben Duckett says the more the merrier when it comes to following on targets. Do you think they'll get more sledging and more vitriol because of how they're perceived?
Oh yeah, they'll get plenty. It doesn't really matter what England side arrives in Australia. The airport workers will give the England side plenty. The taxi drivers, going to a bar, the people behind the bar serving you a drink will give you a little bit of a chirp as well. I do think the Australian public will enjoy this England side though, and that's what England have to work towards, is getting the Aussies on their side. And from my time working there and playing there, and in particular the last few years of being a pundit there, they admire teams that play the right way. And they're always very, very respectful for any opposing player, team that gets on the front foot and puts Australia under pressure. And if England can get to that standard, I think they'll get a huge amount of, dare I say it, love from the Australian public, because they like to see that style of cricket. What England can't afford to do is for the Australians to get onto that motion that we've seen in previous series, where we build it up, we give England a great chance, and then in Perth, where they have an incredible chance with Pat Cummins not playing, they get blown away. And that movie that we've seen many times in recent times will start coming back to the Australians saying, we've seen this before. England arrive, they give it the big chat, they talk the game, and then suddenly in Perth they get blown away. And that's the one concern I have, that they have a great chance of doing something in Perth if they play good disciplined cricket. But I've not seen a team go to Perth and completely dismantle the Australian quick bowlers. I've seen Bumrah last year dismantle the Australian batting lineup, which England could do, but they've got to be very, very wary that their batting lineup doesn't get blown away by the likes of Hazelwood and Stark in that first week.
And just take us back to your time in Australia, the 03 Ashes. You did pretty well yourself. Did you do anything differently ahead of this series? Why do you think it just worked off for you?
No, I mean, well, this England batting unit's very inexperienced for Australian conditions. I mean, they've got 100 in the top 7 in Australia, and that's Ben Stokes, the captain. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I arrived there in 2002-03, never played against the Aussies, and suddenly managed to have a decent series. Alistair Cook had played a little bit against them, and then 10 and 11 he got over 700 runs. So, experience is good if it's good experience. If you've had negative experience, it can be bad. And fresh in mind, fresh in thought, that's what this England side will be. The one concern I have is the preparation. I'm not an old school dinosaur that says, they should play 3 or 4 games. I'm not in that school of thought. But the game at Lilac Hill that they're playing is on a pitch that'll bounce really low. And then they'll play a week later at the Perth Stadium, which will bounce really high. And it's adjusting the lengths as the bowlers need to bowl that little bit fuller, and the batters are going to have to get used to that extra bounce. And that's going to be a real challenge for this England side. This Australian team, they'll be game ready. They're playing a bit of state cricket. They've played a few one-days against India. They got blown away by India in Perth last year. I don't think they'll want that again, because they were rusty in that first test against India. They ended up winning the series, but I think they'll be game ready. Even though they don't have the captain in their team, don't rule this Australian team. I've heard so many ex-England players and pundits saying, "Oh, this is England's great chance. England are going to win the series." They can, but they're going to have to do the disciplines really well. And one of the main disciplines that I've seen England teams, and my team included in 2002-03, myself included, dropping too many catches. And it could come down to, I think England will create chances. They've got to make sure that they take their catches. So it could come down to as much of saying whoever catches the best, and you can pretty much guarantee that Australia will catch the ball. If England can catch well, they could have a great success in this year's Ashes.
You talk about your team there, and Harmy and Fred actually did an interview together, and they said they can see a lot of similarities between this side and the side of 2005. Firstly, can you see that yourself? And secondly, describe what it's like for mere mortals like myself to win an Ashes series. What's the feeling?
Well, I'm trying to work out the similarity. I guess we had an all-rounder in Fred. You've got an all-rounder in Ben, a bowling attack.
I think he was more talking about the mindset.
Yeah, the mindset's aggressive. I like it. I'm a one for getting on the front foot and being. But you got to earn the right. You can't just do it all the time. You can't just play one way. This is England's moment. This is Ben Stokes' moment. I guess people talk about 05 because it was such a great series to play, and it was a great series to watch. We seemed to capture the nation, and the most important aspect, we seemed to grab the moment. We managed to win the series, and this England side need to win. They've drawn the Ashes in 23 where they should have won. They've drawn the Indian series this summer that they should have won. They haven't won a 5-match series since 2017, and for all the talk and they will get bigged up. We're all going to say they've got a great chance. Now's the time that they've got to win. Sport is about winning. It's about getting to this moment where they've played this style of cricket that we've enjoyed, we've admired. But fundamentally, if it needs the England side to just take a little bit of a backward step and play a bit more attritionally to win the Ashes this time, just do it. On January the 8th, I think that's when the series finishes. Whatever it means to get to that, Ben Stokes needs to have the urn in his hand come January the 8th, and it'll take a huge amount of hard work. It'll probably take a little bit of luck. The rub of the green probably will have to go England's way in Australia, which you always need that element of fortune to go the other way. We had it in 05. You look at 2019 when England won the World Cup with you probably 3 or 4 moments in the final when the ball hit Ben Stokes' bat, the drop catch, Trent Boult on the boundary. There's all these moments that you look at in important series or World Cups, you think, oh, that's why you won. But you earn the right to get those moments, and England have got to make sure that they earn the right to get those moments.
That was former England captain Michael Vaughan speaking to our producer and reporter Scott Taylor at an event hosted by leading ticket marketplace Viagogo. Not sure what you made of all that, Harmy. We're lucky to get him, aren't we? He's a very busy man in the media at the moment. I'm not sure that the Australian public will be won over by Bazball, whatever Bazball does, on principle. On principle.
No, I don't think they will. I don't think we're going to get England being cheered from the rooftops of any of the stadiums that from an Australian fan's point of view. I think that the level of respect I think he's talking about is if the Australian fans don't turn up. I think that's what he's trying to say. I think he's saying if England get on top, there'll be nobody inside the stadium other than England fans. That's probably how the Australian supporters will, respect Bazball by not watching it, because they'll just not turn up like they did in 10-11. So, no, I mean the captain's more often than not right. He's always seeing both sides. I've seen a bit of a negative side towards the central contracts, but I think from a positive point of view, England have got a great chance if they start well. There are givens in this Ashes series. The Australian bowling attack will bowl well because they're a very, very fine unit. They've done it for years. With or without Cummins, they'll still do it well. Marnus Labuschagne now at number 3, if he bats at number 3, has come in with ridiculous numbers. He will score runs. Joe Root and Steve Smith, best players in the world, will score runs. And then it'll be a case of, can England will, lose games from winning positions, kamikaze style, and win games on day 4, day 5, when they look like no chance of winning by chasing 330, 340. These are what England do. And I think what Michael's saying is, can you silence the crowd? Can you get off to a good start? And if you can, ride that wave, and that's the most important thing, I think, playing against Australia and Australia.
Yeah, Marnus has scored. He just yesterday scored his 500 in his last 8 innings for Queensland. So yeah, he's a definite shoe-in for number 3 if he doesn't open. And more confirmation that Australia are quite happy to have a more conventional build-up to the Ashes with Travis Head not playing the last two T20s against India to play in a Sheffield Shield game as preparation. Just a last one quickly. Jonathan Trott will leave his role as Afghanistan head coach after the T20 World Cup. I think it was a year ago when Afghanistan had a series of very, very impressive results that we speculated about whether he might move on to higher things. I presume coaching England would be regarded as a higher thing than coaching Afghanistan. I mean, if England had a bad T20 World Cup, is Trotty? Do you think he'd put his hat in the ring? Do you think it would be considered?
I think he deserves to put his hat in his ring, and I'm sure he will put the hat in the ring. Will it come under this regime? I don't think so. I think it would probably be the next cycle of director of cricket, England captain, England coach. It wouldn't surprise me, because I think these three come as a package. Key, Stokes, McCullum. I think he deserves his hat in the ring because of what he's done with Afghanistan and white ball cricket. If England decide to keep one coach, will he get it? I'm not so sure. If it go down to split coaches, I think what he's done with Afghanistan and white ball cricket, I think Jonathan Trott definitely deserves a conversation, probably an interview, and see where he could take this white ball team, because he's a very, very fine coach. He's a good, really, really good man. And I think he commands a lot of respect. He's very, very thorough and very professional. That was the way he was as a player. So, yeah, I think Trotty does deserve a chance of putting his hat in the ring for England. But when that job comes around, I'd be amazed if it comes around while Rob Key is director of cricket. It might be the next one that comes after, and see where he goes. I thought Trotty might have turned up in county cricket at the start of the summer. Another Warwickshire job when he in Westwood got it. I thought Trotty might have gone for that and got into the system that way. He did a brilliant job behind the scenes with Richard Dawson. And help Glamorgan, get out of the second division into the first division in that first half of the summer. And I don't think too many people knew he was there. So whether he turns up after the next World Cup with Afghanistan and finds himself in a county job, and then he can shout his name from close quarters to get an England job, will remain to be seen. But I think you want to go out in a bang and let's see what happens. But he definitely deserves a conversation, because he's gone away, done his education, and he's come back. And unfortunately for him, that in ECB at this moment in time is not the way to do it, because apparently you only play 2 first-class matches and you get a central contract. So Trotty's gone away and worked on his game. And from a coaching point of view, he might have to wait till the next lot come in for him to get serious consideration as a white ball coach.
Let's talk Women's World Cup and victory for India, their first Women's World Cup title. There was always going to be a new name on the cup after South Africa reached the final as well, before going down by 52 runs in the final in Mumbai. Absolutely extraordinary. And we're joined to reflect on the tournament as a whole by Sharda Ugra, my old friend, Hindustan Times cricket writer. Sharda, strange campaign for India, really. It just seemed that the nerves might undermine the whole thing after losing group games to England, Australia and South Africa, and where they did seem affected by nerves. But I have to say that people say, oh, well, it was fate and destiny. Oh, shut up. They are speaking absolute nonsense. The Indian team were brilliant.
They were. But actually, it's like a Bollywood movie. So the middle's always bad, but you're always going to come out on top. No, but more seriously, they put everything together in time, and those 3 defeats that they had, which felt so 1990s Indian men's team limited overs cricket. I cannot tell you. We were like saying, "Oh my God, this is terrible." But they were able to sort of get it together, and that's the whole point of these tournaments. Is that basically when it comes to the knockouts, if you're there in the knockout, just make sure you get that. Whatever. Do you remember in 2011, India lost to South Africa in the Men's World Cup by a run, I think single run, something like that. And but they made the knockouts, and that's it. That's what happened. And literally, it's like the Indian women played three knockouts. They had the match against New Zealand that followed the defeat to England, was the one they needed to win. And then it went. Everything came together at the end. They possibly played what was their perfect game. And I mean, people are just ecstatic, and the women in the sport have just gone absolutely nuts.
Sharda, you mentioned there the men's World Cup in 2011, and I think a lot of people. I was just finishing my career at the time. A lot of people are questioning whether 50-over cricket was relevant anymore, and whether it was going to continue with the invention of T20 cricket. I'm talking about the men's game here.
Yeah.
But then India went and won at home in 2011. The game just transformed into a whole new level. What's the significance of India's women winning this World Cup, with the knock-on effect for the TV ratings, future tournaments around the world? Because it looked an unbelievable spectacle at the end, and where the game could go for young girls and women now is frightening.
I mean, the symbolism of the women's win is one thing, and what it's done for women's one-day cricket is the next thing. Because eventually the 50-over format is the one that has this big trophy. No matter how much 2020 cricket everybody plays, there's a World Cup every 5 months in 2020 it feels like, and but this is the big one. And MS Dhoni said one of the great things about 50-over cricket was that it was like test match compressed into one day. You had that. He played. He loved it. He loved the format. So that's going to get a big boost. At the same time, the women's game in India is going to explode. So in 2017, when India made the World Cup final and played and lost to England by 9 runs or something like that, again the 50-over one, it was literally like the floodgates had opened, and now it's going to be 5x, 10x, that kind of interest in the women's game. A lot of the talent from this women's team has come from the WPL, so there's going to be a big push in the WPL from outside, maybe market forces, maybe owners, maybe people with money to say we want more women's teams, we want more teams in the WPL, in the Women's Premier League. We don't know how the game's going to be administered and governed in that sense, but for the first time, the women's game is, because they won this World Cup, it's now just going to be under the radar, under the microscope, telescope, call it what you want. Because what used to happen is that people used to say about the women, listen, win us something big and get us TV rights. That's not the job of the cricket players. Their job is to win, which they did. Now your job is to go out and market the game as best as you can and get whatever max revenues that you can from it. It's great for the women's game because there's an Indian interest in it. It's re-energized it, I think, in a sense. I'm not saying this in like a boastful kind of way, but just factual, numbers, interest, that kind.
I think it's a watershed moment in the women's game, really, Sharda. People watch sport, and this is often misconstrued as a misogynistic or sexist argument. That the game is administered mostly by men, and they don't rate the women's game. But there's more dynamism. I mean, look at Rita Ghosh in the Indian team. I mean, there are she's and Nadine de Klerk from South Africa. I mean, you've got fast bowlers and batters who can clear the fence and hit sixes, and it's the most compelling tournament. I think in years to come, people will look back at this World Cup and go, that's the moment that changed women's journey towards parity and equality with the men's game. And it's, I mean, tennis was the same, wasn't it? There was a perception that, women just patted the ball back to each other over the net for a long time. And, and people said, men mostly said, what do you mean you want equal pay? But now there's an element of dynamism that wasn't there for, there's more of it now. I think it's reached a tipping point is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely, Neil. You're right. Because we've seen this happening across the big sport, like, say, for example, women's football as well. When you watch women's football, there are less fouls. It's a less over dramatized nonsense sort of rubbish foul stuff that happens in the men's game. Similarly, you're seeing it you're seeing it in tennis. And when you give the women's game that kind of oxygen and money and interest, the women's game just gets better. It gets there's more physicality in the game, and it'll happen as the athletes go along. It's literally like what happened with women's tennis and women's football will happen in women's cricket, which we're seeing at every level. The quality of fielding, the ability to clear the fence. They don't need a lot of them don't need the fence pulled in anymore. They don't need handkerchiefs to play on now. They just give them a good size field and they'll find the gap or they'll clear the fence or whatever it is. So that's true. And the watchability of it is what I mean. The fact that more than almost 40,000 people turned up at the match yesterday, which is a 50-over game, is great. This was tickets sold. It wasn't free seating. Everyone came and people enjoyed it and they loved it. What they also say about the women's game is that it's a separate sport. Don't think of it as an adjunct or an attachment or an accessory to that. It's a separate sport. Look at it like that. It's still fun to watch. It's great fun.
I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, that's perfectly put. It is a different sport, and it should be recognised like that, and it should be enjoyed like that. And I think the women's game. I've talked about the men's game many times in the sort of mid-90s when a more sort of professionalism came in, and sports science came into the game, and players learned how to go in the gym in a certain way to hit the ball and access the ball in a certain way. You give it 10 years, the women will be doing exactly the same. They'll be doing exactly the same, because what nights like this in India winning the World Cup, more eyes on it, like you've said, more money goes into it, more professionalism go into it, the players will get better. But just to the final itself, I mean, what a start. I mean, Shavika Verma got India off to a brilliant start. When you're under pressure and all the eyes are on you, 1.3 billion wanting you to win the tournament, to get off to a start like that, what was it? I think there were 100 for none. That must have settled and eased a lot of nerves going in and around that stadium.
Completely. And around the stadium and in television sets, we're all watching. And actually, I mean, you're going to hate this, Steve, but actually you're saying, it's not the Australians. They're not playing the Australians. So that's what everyone was like. Yeah, I had a chat with someone yesterday and they said, our heartbeats were much lower during the final than they were in the semi-final, because it's just of the standard that the Australians had set. But it was great that the South Africans were there, that another team was there, that the two big strong powers of women's cricket had been sidelined. And Shefali Verma's story is so bizarre, and she is this post-2017 player who's come out hitting big. That's the game she plays, and like Richa Go, she belongs to that sort of tribe of big hitting players after Harmanpreet Kaur. And it was just, and the fact that she played a different kind of inning, and imagine she's just been shipped off from Surat to Bombay and said, please come and play the World Cup knockout, semi-final and final. It's you're the one, and you're going to open the innings. I mean, incredible composure. And she's a very, very confident of herself kind of. I've interviewed her once. She's quite cool, and she's got these tattoos that says faith and all kinds of things. She's fun. She's really fun to chat with. But very, very confident. And it's all these young girls from wherever she comes from, Rohtak, which is not a big city or anything like that. And but it's just this: we play sport, we express. So the thing that guys say, express yourself. With women, it's very important in India to have them express themselves like that, physically, in a space with everyone watching. It's a very big deal. So when you see Shefali do that, I mean, I must tell you, this is my most favorite story from the World Cup is Amanjot Kaur, who is the sort of all-rounder seam bowler that plays for India. She came in the semi-final in Australia, and all of us were sweating buckets and like sort of fainting and everything. And she asked Jemima, she said, okay, her first question to her was, are you going to charge the bowler or am I? Put it on a t-shirt, really. It was too brilliant. So this is just the kind of players that are there in the game. It's wonderful to see.
Sorry. I was going to say something else that's important. You mentioned about the WPL. Where does it take this tournament? Because they've gone and won the World Cup. There's going to be an influx of world cricketers coming over to play in that tournament. When you talk about sort of parity when it comes from a financial point of view, you earn the right to get to that point. Well, I think they've just earned the right, surely.
Absolutely. But how are you going to say that to people in the BCCI and have them say, of course, you're right. Of course, ladies, you are right. Not happening. Okay. But what's going to happen in the WPL is that there will definitely be a push for more teams. because you're seeing these girls. Sri Charni, who's the left arm spinner, the tall Indian girl with hair like mine. She just played in the WPL and then she made her debut in the World Cup. And in this team, there were 10 World Cup debutants. They never played a World Cup before. And so the WPL has Kranti Gaur, who's the seam bowler, the opening bowler, along with Renuka. She also came through the WPL. So you're seeing all this talent come through because they don't need to go through the usual channels, and it'll be interesting to see how the market, business, sponsors, how they respond to this and how they're able to use, how they're able to use their products. So you look at the women's team and say, okay, who in it can be our next superstar and so on. It's a really interesting time, both cricket wise, money wise, and for what our society is going to do handling these fantastic world champions.
We obviously have done a lot on New Zealand in one-day cricket, but I mean it's just worth mentioning the numbers again. I mean they've just been beaten 3-0, hammered really, to be honest. 5 wickets in the first 2 games and a 2-wicket win in the third game in Wellington. That's something of a fight back, but they never really didn't score enough runs. Honestly, Harmy, they've won 4 of their last 15 ODIs, with 3 of those 4 coming against the West Indies, who are the only team ranked below them, who they've beaten. That's 1 of their last 12 against a top 8 team. They could be heading for they could miss out on pre-qualification. They could be heading to the qualifying tournament, which will be held in Harare. They'll be up against the likes of, I don't know, Nepal and Papua New Guinea and so, I mean Zimbabwe are automatic qualifiers as co-hosts. Honestly, it's befuddling.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it'll be hilarious if it does, because I think that's in July, isn't it? And that's the same time the 100's on. So which England team goes there would be. I think we all ridiculed South Africa for sending a C team to New Zealand. Well, if that happened and England had to send, it'd be interesting. I tell you what, that central contract conversation at the start of this show might come home to roost when it comes to the fact that England might have to go to Harare and qualify. Look, I mean, the takeaway from this series is Brendan McCullum, he's just taking over the white ball job, and he is. I'm not saying he's not. From a 50-over point of view, I think we are. Muddled thinking is just ridiculous. I think T20 cricket, we are a fantastic side. We are probably one of the favourites for the World T20, and we should go on and win it. I'd love to see us go on and win it. But 50-over cricket is basically being played by the T20. It's a T20 mentality. And if Joe Root doesn't score runs, and there's a high, I don't know what you've said, the stats there and the numbers, but if Joe Root doesn't score runs, we don't bat 42 overs. We've been 35, 36, 40 overs bowled out. And if Joe Root scores runs, we win more percentages of games. He has in the recent past. And that's staggering. It really is, because you can't win games if you only bat 40 overs. And it's as simple as that. We've all said the same thing. You listen to the podcast, you listen to Nasser and Athers, it's a brilliant podcast. Butch the same. We're not having a go for the sake of having a go. The numbers are there. It's a 50-over contest. We're not very good at the minute in 50-over cricket. We're 8th in the world, potentially going to Harare. We've got to bat 50 overs. There's a start. Bat 50 overs, back your bowlers to then win the game for you. But if you only bat 40, less than 40, 42 overs, you ain't winning it. You don't deserve to win games. And that, unfortunately, is where England's white ball cricket's at. The message from McCullum is obviously coming through Brook and Harry Brook saying, we just got to go harder. We've just got to go harder. He said that after the first game. I think there was 9 players faced 12 ball or less. How on earth can you go harder? I think 6 of them faced less than 10 balls. And you're saying going harder. This is unfortunately where it's back to bit. For me, it should be just back to basics of 50-over cricket. Can you bat 50 overs with the 11 you've got? And if they do, they'll score a very, very good score. At this moment in time, They're not using the brains enough to bat 50 overs. They're batting less than 40. I mean, even in the qualifying competitions in Harare, if you don't bat 50 overs against the emerging nations, there's a chance they'll beat you. So yeah, it is just frustrating to watch that 50-over side when you look at the T20 side and how good that T20 side is.
It just seems to me quite simple, Harmy, that they've forgotten one of the basic tenets of 50-over cricket is that, well, I'm just echoing what you just said. It's a long time. It's a lot of, and it just seems perhaps subconsciously beneath them to take time out. It seems like they don't want to be seen to have only scored 15 from 40 balls. They sometimes you just got to, they're very good at T20 cricket. So turn it into a T20 game. Have that mentality. I remember when I was learning how to run a marathon, my coach said, you can run 10Ks quite well, or you can run 20. So just treat the build up to it as just get to the start line relatively fresh and unscathed. I mean, it's not rocket science. This is why Scott Taylor's such a brilliant producer. He's just sent me a note as we're broadcasting. 7 times Joe Root has scored 50 plus. England have made over 300, and 7 times this in the last calendar year, and 7 times, or just over a year, 7 times hasn't reached 50. England haven't reached 250. So I mean, that's absolutely graphic, isn't it? But England need to have another couple of batsmen with the same mentality. So you look at Joe's. I mean, he ticks over. He'll score at a run.
That's Joe's fault.
But Joe's very, very good at ticking over at a runner ball and batting for a long period of time because he's England's most technically proficient batsman. But if necessary, and this has happened, Joe will reach 50 off 70 balls. And then you've got the firepower at the back end, and you're very good at T20 cricket. It's just you can't go hard for 50 overs.
The art of white ball cricket from a batting point of view is, can you put the bowler under pressure, and can you keep putting the bowler under pressure? It's when the bowler's on top of you, can you withstand the pressure that the bowler's putting on? And at this minute in time, England are struggling in 50-over cricket to go through them passages of play when the bowler is having a little bit of on top. I look at this England team. Brendan McCullum says the best players we've got. He's right, 100% right, and I will never argue with him.
Actually, let's hold that thought, because let's hear Brendan McCullum saying exactly that.
I believe these are the best players in the country in this format. Not everyone fires all at the same time, and there's times where if you have enough guys who are struggling at the same time, then you're obviously going to be under the pump, and I think that's what we've seen in this series. And I firmly believe in the group of players that we've got, and we know that in a couple of years' time there's a World Cup in South Africa in this form of the game, and I think I see majority of these guys that are in the squad are going to be present in that, and we've got to give them the time and keep working towards the combinations that you want for a tournament like that. Clearly, we need to win games beforehand to make sure that we're in that tournament. But that's what's in front of us, and that's the things we'll be talking about after the series for sure.
And there you go, England head coach Brendan McCullum. Yes, what you just said. They are the best players. He's got the best players. They are,
and if you, it matters how many. I mean, we've been around the world. We've been India. We've been into sort of New Zealand. We've been to the Caribbean. If you think 50 overs is middle of the day, England more often than not 250, 264, 2, 3, whatever in a Test match. I mean, if you rock out England's batting in a Test match, 3 slips in a gully this summer on the good pitches we've had. I mean, England would have fared better playing with a red ball against 50 overs than they would with a white ball in New Zealand against 36, 37, 40 overs that they faced. So it's mindset. It comes down to the mindset for me, and it comes down, and this is what possibly going to concern me. I'm not going to accuse them of being soft. They're not soft. But what they are is when they get in times of contest, big contest. That's what Ashes cricket does. That's what playing against India does. That's what playing against the best teams in the world. If you want to be the best team in the world, you have to respect the contest you're in. Sometimes England either blow that contest away, or in recent past, they've laid down, and unfortunately, they've made kamikaze mistakes that they haven't been able to recover from when they're in a big contest against a good bowler or on a pitch which has got a little bit in it. And that, for me, is slightly concerning with a month to go before the biggest series that these guys will play in the last sort of 2 or 3 years.
Just confirmation, by the way, that Bangladesh and the West Indies are currently below England, although Bangladesh have 11 ODIs against Zimbabwe and Ireland next year. So they, if England continue to lose and Bangladesh win those games, they could climb above England. And the possibility of England playing in that pre-qualifier is real. I mean, scary as that thought is. Although, South Africa were in a very similar situation, similar position before the last World Cup, although they did qualify automatically, but they sort of made peace with the fact and said, you know what? And Temba Bavuma started to say, if we have to go, we have to go. If we have to pre-qualify, then that's what.
Yeah, but it's fine Temba Bavuma saying that, but if it was in January in Harare, I don't think Temba Bavuma would be saying the same when the SA20 was on. And I would imagine Golden Thompson might have something to say that what we're going to do if we have to go pre-qualifying, what team are we going to send? Because we've just sold a competition for 550 million. I don't think they'd be too happy if Harry Brook has to go away and do a pre-qualifying when he's just, the 100's just been sold. That's how real this is. And that, for me, should be a wake-up call to the hierarchy to make sure that these new round of central contracts that have come out, the improvement in 50-over cricket has got to be there. Because if it's not, that scenario, I don't think it'll ever come to that, but it's close, and that's embarrassing.
Indeed. Well, that's the show for this week. You've been listening to Following On with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. And we'll be back at a similar time next week to continue our build-up. We've been building up for months to the start of the Ashes, and so much more besides. For now, this has been another edition. Our 260th, by the way. Scott, Harmy, happy 260th.
Well done.
That's 260 editions on the trot, not a week missed, of Following On.